It's supposed to be a sign of respect. But one man is being accused of making a mockery of First Nations culture by performing welcome to country ceremonies. Neil Evers says he's a fifth-generation Indigenous Australian, but Sydney's largest Aboriginal Land Council claims he is yet to prove it. Nathan Moran is CEO of the local Aboriginal Land Council and he joins me now. Nathan, welcome to you.
Thanks, Vic.
So why do you want Mr Evers to stop performing the Welcome to Country ceremony? Because he's been doing it on Sydney's northern beaches for around a decade now.
Yes, one, because he's not Aboriginal or doesn't meet the test to qualify as Aboriginal, but two, even on his own attested story. At 65 years of age, he was a non-Aboriginal man who had no idea, let alone spoke about it being Aboriginal. And you hear about his language, the derogatory language he uses to describe Aboriginal people or living in Dubbo or none having a good suntan. Well, sorry, that's racism. That's bigotry for us who are born Aboriginal. It shows he's not us, just the way he speaks and acts and conducts himself. But the ceremony of Welcome to Country is something that's only done by authorised community and or cultural representatives. Yeah, it's bastardry of our culture.
And is he doing the ceremony wrong?
Yes, so incorrectly acknowledging the wrong tribal groups or language groups or clan groups.
It's not random though, is it, to prove that you are Aboriginal, that you are First Nations? You have to meet certain criteria. One, that you're of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent. Yes. Two, that you identify as an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander person. And three, that you're accepted by the community in which you live in. And Neil Evers says that he ticks all those boxes.
According to himself. But we, the actual authority, that body being the one who does that test, who applies it, had Neil submit to the council. It was back in about 2011. The council declined his application because he could not meet the test.
So you can prove 100% that he's not Aboriginal?
Yeah, he's not on our roll. You can only be on our membership roll under the New South Wales Land Rights Act if the council approves your application. Our council did not because it was not satisfied he met that test.
But he says he's fifth generation and that his grandmother was
That's another example of being non-Aboriginal. No one Aboriginal speaks like that. You are Aboriginal or you're not. Or you can affirm, you know, you have an Aboriginal heritage. To claim you're Aboriginal by stating a claim that 5 generations ago you had an ancestor, he's not really being genuine. In fact, he's being deceptive to say he's Aboriginal.
Even if you stumble across that information later in life?
Look, well, to discover an Aboriginal heritage is a whole different concept to being born Aboriginal, being raised Aboriginal and known as Aboriginal. So that's what we're talking about, a major difference here with Neil.
But can you be Aboriginal if you find out about your background?
You can be proven if you come to the council and the community and or council accepts that, and we have members who have done that, who have come back to their community, culture and kin. But it's actually the process of the 3-part test. And in Neil's test, at 65 he was non-Aboriginal, at 66 he becomes Aboriginal. It's just not a bona fide story.
I guess how would you feel yourself personally if someone were to question your background?
Well, that's a right they have, and then I'd be able to prove that based on facts and evidence. Those sort of claims or statements or questions can be answered by evidence of fact, whereas Neil, in his own statements on his own narrative, says his parents did not tell him he was Aboriginal.
Because we spoke to Mr Evers and he told us that he's performing these ceremonies for his elders who support him and that he doesn't make a living out of this, that he volunteers his time. If he isn't Indigenous, what's in it for him? Why is he doing this?
Well, they're things I can't answer, but to find his own elders in the last 13 to 14 years since the outing of his identity came out, in his own words, he said it put a wind in his sails. That is just preposterous to say his elders. His own narrative shows he only become Aboriginal by identifying less than 14 years ago. And
you say he's not the only person pretending to be Aboriginal?
Yes, it's a much broader problem we have here, Deb. A lot of unfortunate realities we've found in academia. A lot of professors are self-identifying Aboriginals who are not Aboriginal, don't have any Aboriginal descent or identity.
And how damaging is that to your culture?
Deeply. It's bastardising us now because they're now speaking for us. They're now providing policy advice for us. They're now affecting all forms of our life, whether that be including themselves in our stats, which skews life expectancy, health outcomes, economic realities when they're not born Aboriginal. So they can't become Aboriginal through some sort of self-proclamation. And ABS stats show, you know, there's well and truly about 40% of people were not born Aboriginal, identify as Aboriginal. needs to be amended. We know who's us, let us determine who's us and have the respect and to allow us to do that.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. Nathan, we thank you for coming in tonight and sharing the story. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
My father, he was a fisherman, and he unfortunately didn't go to war because he was a provider for food for the people. After the war, he was a bit annoyed though, but all his mates had gone there, never seen any action, and come back and got war loans. They got all that sort of stuff, where he got nothing. But it wasn't until about nearly 15, maybe 18 years ago that we got a call from a cousin who I never knew about, saying that we were actually related to Aboriginal people, which took the wind out of your sails a little bit, but we took it on board, and we're now very proud of the fact. And down at the end of Darley Street, there was a small mob of Aboriginal people lived there, and she would cook dinner up for them and put it on the windowsill, and they'd come and get it. And where we lived, in Waratah Street, my parents said, don't go over the hill because the Aboriginal people will get you. And as kids, we thought, well, we don't want that to happen. My father, when he came back from voting, and I said, so how'd you go? He said, oh, do the same thing every time. I said, oh, do you? Yeah. He said, I write across the sheet, give it back to the blacks. It would have been an informal vote, but he was getting his point across. And about going up and not seeing the Aboriginal people up the hill, that's the only 2 times I can remember my parents ever saying anything, because they were protecting us. The cousin that got in touch with me is called Bob Walterer. Unfortunately, Uncle Bob's not with us anymore. But there was a book produced called Bob Walterer's Family Tree. He and his sister owned a house next door to one another at Brookvale. His sister died, and they sold both properties together to developers.
If we don't look after her, she's going to punish us. We've got to say it's our job. It's been something we've inherited, looking after our country. We would never sell our country off, ever. We don't want to make money out of our country. We want our country to remain beautiful, healthy, bush country.
And he went through his sister's belongings and found a case with all the documents dating back to 1775 of birth certificates, death certificates. The whole lot was there. So what he did was started to ring around all the people that he knew in the family, and he got to about 120, and then of course it started to accumulate from there. At that time, the Guring-gai Council offered to help produce a book, and also the Aboriginal support group also helped as well. And by the time they'd researched the book and got as many people as they could in there, they had to stop at nearly 1,200 people. And we still get people today saying we've done research, and yes, we can connect back to Bungaree, which is the elder we go to.